Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Infuse Your Future podcast, where we bring together people and ideas who make the world a better place. I'm your host, Carla Persnani. I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Dr. Cheryl Wilson. She has a doctorate in education. She retired, but is coming out of retirement. She's been a teacher, a principal, and an instructional coach. And today she's going to talk to us about how to teach kids to learn. So without further ado, hi, Cheryl.
Hi, thank you for having me. I really appreciate this time where I can talk about how to teach primarily elementary students how to learn, because I want to prepare them for middle school.
I absolutely love that. Now, of course, a lot of us are thinking we've been sending kids to school since its inception. We assume that kids are learning at school. So can you kind of clarify what you mean by you're going to teach kids to learn, and what is the current process and how can you improve it?
Well, like you have your little precious one and they enter kindergarten and they're really excited to learn. They soak up learning. And then they go to first grade and they're learning to read. And they go to second and third grade. But what happens oftentimes, the students who have a lot of support at home, they're excelling. They always have their hand raised to answer questions. But those students who may not have support, who may need more time to learn, then by third grade, their self-image, their lack of confidence starts to sink in. They see themselves as not able to achieve. If that happens in third grade, what can you imagine happens by the time they go through fourth and fifth grade and get to middle school? They get to middle school and they rely on their peers for knowledge. And in middle school, if I'm a low performer in, third, fourth, and fifth grade, in middle school, I'm placed in low achieving. I'm placed in Read 180. I'm placed in the low achieving math course. And so at that time, I'm too afraid to learn. I'm too afraid to excel. I'm in a peer group that thinks that learning is not something they go to school for, that they go to school to be with their peers. So in terms of how to learn, students who know how to learn are taught that learning is a process. How to learn requires time. How to learn means that when they go home, they have a place to study, and when they're doing their homework, it's not just an assignment. They say, for example, I work with a 10-year-old and we're doing place value. Well, you've done the place value assignment, but why are you doing this assignment? What are you learning? What can you show me that you learn? We do the assignment and then it's his self-assessment, meaning that if I give you these many problems, are you able to do them? And then it's talking about where place value is in the real world. When you are just taking in information and you don't have an objective as to why that information is important, that you don't have an understanding of when and how you're going to use it and how it applies in real life. Usually students, I've seen them particularly, I realize this in elementary school, I'm seeing it more in middle school. They write their notes, they do the homework, they may answer some questions, and they may be asked to complete a rubric that shows that they understood things. However, oftentimes in school, it is about a checklist. I can't tell you how many times I'm in the middle school classroom and I hear teachers say, and I'm not teacher bashing because I've been a teacher, but I hear teachers say, check your grades. I hear teachers say, this is the amount of points you're going to get for this assignment. People, and I'm sure in the audience, they can ask themselves, when I went to school, did anybody teach me how that I needed to repeatedly practice something because I wanted to go from my short-term memory, my working memory, into my long-term memory, that I wanted to be able to demonstrate what I know, that I wanted to be able to teach somebody else what I know, that I have learned through support from my teacher, that when I do my homework, it's my responsibility to assess myself. That in class, My teacher allows time. Say, for example, in elementary school, they do those spelling tests. You take a spelling test, you cram, which is not appropriate, but you cram the night before. That's what you're taught because you want to get the spelling test correct. It's about getting the words correct, but not being able to use those words or to be able to apply them down the line. How to learn requires deliberate, repeated practice. It means that you are able to retrieve what you learn. It means that it's not rote memorization. But if I am using, say, for example, flashcards to understand a concept or even its multiplication, I use those flashcards and I ask myself, what is the answer to this? How do I know it? And I get support when I'm in class and from my peers. I know this, I can explain it, I understand the concept. It's not just rote memorization. So again, how to learn. When I know how to learn, I know how to use strategies to remember what I learn. I know how to retrieve what I learn. I know that it's important that I assess myself. I know that it's important that I am able to explain. And if I can explain it, the brain doesn't forget what it knows and understands. And if I can't explain it, then I have the self-regulation. I have the independent skills to have the drive to understand it. When I'm going back to the analogy of a child who enters middle school and is taught that they're a low performer, that motivation, that drive to learn, it sinks oftentimes, right? There's an article now talking about what states are going to retain third graders because they can't read. Now, to retain a child without them understanding, then they've internalized, I can't read, something's wrong with me. To retain them and put them through the same program that they had before without helping them understand who they are as a learner, with them not understanding that some students learn at a pace that's faster than them. It's not that they're smarter than them, but maybe I process it longer. When we're supporting you, I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to help you understand that you have control over your learning. It's retrieving strategies, it's retrieving knowledge so that when I am faced with the learning challenge, I don't solely depend on what the teacher taught, but what I know and I can do and perform on my own. It's just, again, I think I mentioned to you what really hurts my heart and why I'm coming out of retirement to teach students, particularly elementary students, how to learn is that I get excited going to these, I go to the 8th grade promotion, and it's so good to see those students go across the stage. But what's hard is I watch students go across the stage who only have the skills of a 5th grader, that throughout that time in middle school, they got maybe 1s and 2s, they got by, they're promoted, they're going across the stage, being promoted to go into high school with 5th grade understanding. And they're supposed to have access to 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade curriculum. So it's so important. If anybody takes anything away, educators, parents, caregivers, help your child take ownership of their learning. Help your child understand that when they learn something, they have to be able to explain it. They have to know why it works, why it doesn't work. Help your child know that grades are not necessarily an indication of what they can know and be able to do. It's more an indication of how many homework assignments they turned in, maybe the quizzes that they passed, and sometimes it's based on effort and participation. So I could get a really high grade because I participate and I speak, but my tests show me at a lower level. So when your child brings home that report card, please do not use that as a sole indicator that they know how to learn and what they can produce.
Everything you said is so true and so beautiful. You get these kids when they're little, they can't wait to go to school. But a kid gets into kindergarten, and a lot of times by first, second, or third grade, they're done because the kids know they're not really getting what they need. Why aren't these things already being done? What are the obstacles and how do we get around them?
How people learn is not part of many teaching credential programs across the country, nor was it in my doctorate program. So I would recommend anybody, you can take a course, How People Learn through Coursera, COURSERA.org on how people learn. It wasn't until I took that course that I realized that it's repeated practice, it's deliberate practice, that it is interleaving. That means that, say, for example, when teachers send home math problems, oftentimes it's all addition. Now, if the student really knows, it's just rote. It's just, they go through the procedure. Interleaving means that if I'm sending something home, I want the homework to challenge their thinking. So interleaving means that it may have some addition problems, it will have some subtraction problems, it will have subtraction with regrouping, it will ask the child to show how you know your answer is correct. That means that the child has to metacognate. The child has to have some strategies. I can't tell you how many students, they get out a textbook, they don't know that there's a glossary, they don't know that there are chapters, they don't know if there's questions at the end, they don't know what the bold print means. So what a student who knows how to learn, they preview what they're going to be learning. They ask themselves questions about what they're going to be learning. They take time to not just highlight and reread, but they create notes. They use notes that they're summarized. The notes can be an illustration, it can be a cartoon, but they're invested in saying, I have a goal for this. This is what I'm supposed to know and be able to do as a result of this assignment. I had been a roving sub at a middle school, and I am in this class where I see this young, I think she was seventh grade at that time, and she's got this notebook. In that notebook, she has little notes to herself about how to complete, how to write problems in different ways. She uses that notebook not just to take notes, but she writes notes about mathematical processes that puzzle her and what she needs to remember. And so I interviewed her later and I said, how did this happen? And of course, she's already driven, but she talked about, even in second grade, she had a peer, which I want to impress upon parents, the groups that your child's peer group has a strong influence in terms of their motivation and desire to learn. So anyway, in second grade, she's got this peer that she works with, and the teacher says, oh, today's homework is to read for 30 minutes. Well, she and her friend, they would do it for 90 minutes. She was driven because she wanted to learn. A statement that Jim Quick says, who's an author, and he talks about learning and being limitless. But the statement is, learning is earning. And I'm not necessarily talking about earning a living. What I'm talking about, learning gives you access to a future that you can control and a future that you can develop and overcome over time. And it's really crucial now in terms of AI, because there are not going to be so many opportunities for people who are not continuous learners to have access to a future that they can control. So in my fifth grade class, what they had to do was to write a personal goal and an academic goal. And each Friday, they had to stand up and talk about how much progress they made on each of those goals. I have evidence from my own teaching experience that students can be taught, they can be motivated to take control of their learning. Students need to develop their curiosity. What about this? How does it work? What I'm asking parents to do is, regardless of your situation, when you're with your child, just to ask them, what did you learn today? What did you learn that you can teach me? You want to teach your child that what they learn in school is related to a life skill. You can have them, you can even have a first grader have a calendar that plans what they're going to do in advance. You can praise your child for not being online so many hours. There's ways that you want to show that you're invested in their education, that you care about their education, and that the more you learn, the more you earn. An athlete or a team member is not given a workbook to learn how to dribble. They don't learn a skill this week and a new skill the next week and a new skill the next week. No, an athlete has to have repeated practice. An athlete uses their mistakes to learn, especially if they're in professional ball. An athlete consolidates learning. An athlete knows that they're building their mind and their body to achieve a goal. It is the same with children. They need to be able to think. They need to be able to understand that their mind is a treasure that they're building, so they want to use it to achieve their goals. Do you think Steph Curry gets up in the morning and says, I don't feel like playing basketball, I'm not going to practice? No. All of those role models that they see here and there, they came from the same place. If they can do it, so can your child. But that has to be something that parents are infusing, and that has to be something that in school. So the takeaway, children can become self-regulated, independent learners. They need time to learn. They need encouragement. They need to be able to see their growth. These skills need to be reinforced in school as well as home. I could go on and on, as you can see, about this.
I love your passion.
My ultimate goal is to coach and tutor primarily students in elementary school. I'm going to do it online. I'm going to work with districts to do it in person. But more important, the reason I'm doing this podcast, the reason I want to do public speaking is I want the world to know. I want administrators, I want teachers, I want parents, I want caregivers, everyone to know that it's possible for every child to know how they learn, to regulate their learning, and to be motivated so that learning is earning. And if they ever want to be an entrepreneur, own their own business, or graduate from college, that this is what it takes. And it's our job to motivate and engage students to see their capacity and to achieve at their highest ability, just like athletes do.
One word that I don't hear said often enough is library. The library is free resources, free audio, video, hardcover books, audiobooks, ebooks. I mean, and depending on where you are, even free classes. I know the library where we are is fantastic. They have classes for all ages, kids, adults, how to use a laser printer, how to set up a business. And these are free resources. And back when you were talking about the parents getting involved with the children learning, like you said, it doesn't have to be complicated. What if they sat down and just say, what is the intention for learning this today? And then to ask for a goal. Those are such simple things. What is your intention before you start? That gets people thinking, yeah, why am I learning this? Why is it important? And this is why. And then to have a goal, everybody loves a goal. It gives you something to reach for. If you can motivate a kid to learn, they're going to go home and they're going to want to read more about that subject on their own. If you try to force a kid to learn something that they don't understand or know why it's important to learn or don't want to learn, it doesn't matter what you do to them. They're not going to put an effort into learning it. So it's really just intention, goal, and how to create that internal motivation.
And that's what is the biggest challenge that I will face as I focus on students who are struggling in 4th and 5th grade. The initial part is the motivation. And just like adults, we are motivated to do something that we see valuable. We are motivated to do something that we feel like we have confidence and that we have choice. I want to start with the elementary because by the time they get to middle school, it's a different monster. Their peers tell them which way to go. I have a chart that shows this is what I did before I learned this. This is what I can learn, and this is how I can demonstrate it. As a matter of fact, I used to even do that with my 1st and 2nd graders. where this is what I knew when I was 6, this is what I know while I am 7, so they can see they can monitor and see their own learning. So it starts with, again, motivation, engagement, and then we're going to look at those metacognitive and thinking skills, where having him keep a journal. How did your day go today? The ultimate goal is to get repeated practice and really deliberate practice. This is a skill that I'm working on, and I want to know, have I consolidated, because I want to use and retrieve the skill. The big point that I'm driving home is that just doing a homework assignment and turning it in is nothing. Just writing notes in class that are turned in is nothing. Just taking a one-time assessment every 6 weeks is nothing. Quizzes, assessments are information. I wouldn't be afraid so much of standardized tests if I had the opportunity over time to be quizzed, and what I didn't understand, I was quizzed again, and I had repeated practice. These are, gosh, I could go on and on. These are the major ideas I want people who are listening and paying attention to keep in their head. Motivation, engagement, a place to study, asking questions, using flashcards, writing, making quizzes, summarizing notes. It's a lot, but learning is a lot. And if I know how to learn, those things are part of me, because I want to be a self-regulated, independent learner. It's hard.
I know.
Yeah, there's
And
time management, organization, and planning, but yeah, that's the big thing.
I like that you added earlier in the discussion the teaching, because there's that old adage, see one, do one, teach one, and then you got it nailed. Have you ever heard that expression?
There's sometimes what I see, maybe I learn, what I remember, what I learn, what I write, what I learn, but it's what I do is what that makes the learning stick. And that's when I talk about learning that they can apply. See, in school, particularly in terms of mathematics, it's just something they do in school. When they go home, they maybe read, write, and they're thinking, discussion, read, write, discuss. But in school, if I only do math in school, when am I applying it? Kids can be taught to keep a budget. Students can be taught to write down what are supplies and the costs they need for school. Students can know their height, their shoe size.
Well, I'm really glad you're doing this, because even recently I saw a YouTube interview with America Ferrera. She was in the Barbie movie, and she was talking about how she went through school. She was a good student. She graduated from high school. I think she started college and then went to do some acting, and then went back to college afterwards. And when she went back to college the second time, she had finally learned how to learn. And she thought, wow, if I had been able to learn like this my entire life, how different my life would be. So even someone who's successful and has graduated high school, gone to college, and I would say that even for me, if I went back now and repeated high school, college, even medical school, I would be able to handle information so much differently and look at information so much differently, because over time I'm learning how to learn.
I've talked to many of my friends who have gone on to college, and when they got there, many students get stuck, because that is the time when you have to be an independent learner. That is the time when you have to be able to pick up a textbook and know how to take notes. I mean,
and when you want to learn something, you're going to learn it fast. And you're going to probably have fun doing it.
Yeah.
Now tell me, you've said that you've come out of retirement because you're so passionate about teaching people how to learn. Have you started your own business around that? And what does that look like?
I want to start with small groups of students at a school site. What I've understand from hearing and reading more about tutoring is that the face-to-face and small groups work is much more effective than, say, for example, doing 10 students online or even larger groups. What I am doing is trying to get the word out so that any educator, any parent, any caregiver, any district administrator knows that this is important, and it's a movement that says all students need to become self-regulated, independent learners. They need to be able to say, this is how I learn to do this. This is how I know what I know. And this is who I am as a learner who understands that learning is earning, so that I can become and have the freedom to do whatever I want.
Now, have you already developed a course that you teach to other people, particularly kids, how to learn?
So like I said, right now, it was just gearing up and getting ready. I am developing the course. I plan to launch online by the end of September, October. In between that time, I'm trying to take advantage of many public speaking opportunities as I can to get the word out. Like I said, I want this to be something that is part of teaching credential programs across the nation. Once I start the online, going to start very small, no more than 4 students, so that we can progress slowly, working with PTAs to get into to inform them about the need of this. And further down the line, it would be professional development for teachers, but really starting small and pushing myself forward, because I'm not a perfectionist, but I want, if I say, as a result of working with me, your child is going to be much more motivated. Your child is going to develop the ability to focus. Your child is going to be able to explain what they can learn, particularly in math, using numbers, pictures, and words. And your child is going to understand and be able to practice what they learn and quiz themselves and ask questions. I want to be able to have clear outcomes so that the student feels more confident and the parent can see a difference.
So, what is the biggest thing you want the audience to take away?
The biggest thing I want the audience to take away is that they need to be, particularly parents and caregivers, they need to be involved with knowing what their children are learning in school. They need to, say, for example, regardless of the age, have their children read to them. I know many parents say, my child can read, but they don't know if their child reads fluently. They don't know if their child reads for understanding. I want particularly educators to consider taking the course, How People Learn. It might be called Uncommon Sense Teaching or whatever, using Coursera. I want to really reflect about when we say children are not doing well, that we need to understand that we are trying to teach too much in too short amount of time. You can compare our math books to those math books in China. And let's say maybe China has 100 pages for the course of a year. They go deep and they seek for understanding, teaching for understanding, and for students to ask themselves, do I know how to do this? So my main focus of this podcast is to inform people that good grades are fine. Doing homework is fine. But those 2 elements are not indicators of what your child knows and is able to do. They're not indicators of their ability necessarily to apply or the ability to get through college. And that too many of our students are going from elementary school into middle school. And I recognize in the last school I was, maybe a third of the students who are going from 4th, 5th grade into middle school do not have the skills to access the middle school curriculum. So it's just looking at our education system. We're teaching too much, short amount of time. We're not helping students become accountable for their learning. We're not necessarily teaching them critical thinking skills or metacognitive skills that motivate them to understand that learning is in their hands and that they can become people who can achieve things just like any role model because they know to put in the time, they know how to focus, they know that learning is what gets people what they want. It is the bottom line. And that has to be communicated from parents. That has to be communicated across the board. If I had $1 million, I would put up billboards. Learning is earning. Get your education. And I know it's hard because I have many adults who hated school. But that parent needs to say, I hated it. It wasn't for me, but I'm going to make it different for my child.
I love to have a call to action for people with every episode. I'm wondering if you have a call to action for people today.
Okay, absolutely. The call to action for teachers is to recognize that the students can become self-regulated learners, they can become independent learners, but it's for teachers to consider taking the course, which is called Uncommon Sense Teaching. They can go to Coursera.org. The call to action for parents is just to really get involved in their child's education, finding out what their children know and what they're not able to do. And consider this is a good resource. It's titled Wisest Learners, Parent Edition, Unlock the Secret to Your Child's Academic Success. What I would say is that a child needs to unlock their own secret to academic success. And by that, I mean, children need to understand, sweethearts, know that you can learn. Say to yourself every morning, I can learn anything. Maybe I haven't learned it yet, but I can learn anything. And that's it. 3 easy things. Take a course, get a book, affirmation, I can learn anything.
I absolutely love that.
Thank you so much, Carla. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, I appreciate you too. All right, thanks for listening, and I hope you really enjoyed today's episode. I would love it if you clicked like or subscribe and even share this episode with someone else that you think might enjoy it. Have a great day.